Hi, today I'm going to teach you about classes and definitions. So first of all, I'm going to explain classes to you and then definitions. Those are very handy when you want to organize your program. And I'm going to go to a class that I've already done. First of all, I want to calculate the perimeter of a rectangle and then also the area of that rectangle. And in effect, if you utilize the properties of a rectangle, you've got length and you've got width. Now, what I've done is I've declared a class, which is the calculation. So the class, you will see, would be highlighted in orange. And then I called my class calc. Now you would see I don't have any parameters inside there. Then you use the colon, and now I'm doing my calculation. So first I calculate the perimeter. So I've used a value called per, or a variable called per, and length times, the star is times 2 plus width times 2 would give me the perimeter. Then the area would be length times width, and then I've added this an extra one which just talks about vertices, and vertices then would be the 4 base corners plus then one at the top if it is a rectangular prism. So just for interest sake, so those are my classes that I would call. Now what I have is that first of all I need to set my rectangle or my object equal to the class. And then I've got a variable, a single variable called rectangle, which represents all every one of the properties within calc. So all three calculation properties are represented by one single variable called rectangle. Now I can just call rectangle and then call the properties for each one. So if I want to call perimeter, I would say rectangle full stop per, and the per is that variable over there in class, and it would return a calculation for perimeter. If I want to get the calculation for rectangle area, then I would first call my variable again dot area, and it would return that the result of that calculation, which is the area calculation, length times width. And if I want to get the vertices, I will then go rectangle dot vertices. Now effectively I then can run my program, and what you would see is it returns the calculated values. Now what I can do is every time I can just change the parameters. So if I want to make length 15 and width 10, then I run it, it would automatically go and calculate the perimeter and the area. So just again to recap, if I want to access that the properties, first of all, I would declare it in a class. So I declared it in my class and I called my class calc. I then would specify various variables that then are then members of the class. Then if I want to access a member, I would first set my variable in my main program to equal the class. So rectangle equals calc, and then after that I can, and just here's an example, I can get rectangle and small caps or lowercase rectangle dot, and I can see all I think it's rectangle dot. I can see all the members that are then part of rectangle, and if I want to call vertices, I would click on vertices and it would call it. So that's effectively how it works. This is the a class and how a class works. Now I'm going to do a definition. So classes are normally used within a program to group large and complicated calculations together, and then I call them members of the calculation. Or it could be other things, like for instance, if I want to set parameters, let's create another class. I'm going to call that class values, and I'm going to go and set the values of a rectangle, length and width, and let's go. If I then want to do the calculation, I would call the values. So I would say values dot L, values dot W, and then values dot L, or length, values dot W, and it should call those again. Now let's see if that works. It gives me an error on line 17 on area, and I've probably missed something. Oh, there. I must just close the loop, and there it is, and now it should work, and there it works. So I can now have different values assigned and use that in the values class. So if I want to display just the values, then I can call the values, and I can go print, and I can go say length, and length. If I want to call the value, I say values dot L, and it would call that value. And I'm gonna I just need to put a comma in there, and I'm gonna call that again, and you will see I put W in there and I run it. There you go. You've got the length, and I just need to make the description, fix the description, width, and now I've got my length as I can call my length value of my length members, and of my value members, and those would be length and width. And I can also call members rectangle, which would be perimeter, area, and vertices. And those are separate classes then. One class can call another class, and you can also inherit from another class. But these are the basicals of classes. And now I'm going to move into definitions. So let's say, for instance, I want to do a tax calculation, but I don't want to repeat the calculation all the time. Now I'm going to create a definition, and I'm going to say to calculate the tax on a or the VAT on an amount, I want to say call my definition calc tax, and it needs an input which would be rand value, and I need to put a colon. So first principle, definition is a reserved word, and it's part of a function. I provide a variable name for the definition. Then I go and I put in input parameters. So rand value is then an input parameter. And I want to go and then, first of all, make sure that I get the right calc. Now, first of all, I want to calculate VAT. So VAT is normally calculated 15% of the rand value. So rand value times 0.15 would calculate the VAT. Then I also want to return the actual value including VAT, the final value, the sales value. Sales value equals rand value times rand value plus VAT. So the two together gives me the sales value. And then, just want to spell it correctly, otherwise it just looks messy. And then, I want to return the result to the main program. I want to return that, and I want to return sales value. I'm going to return it to the main program. So now here's my main program. In my main program, I'm just going to put some comments in there. This is my main program. Starts immediately after the definition, and I'm going to go and just say a return calculate the VAT. So sales VAT. So first of all, the original purchase price, and I'm going to just call it purchase, is 10,000. And now I'm going to call my definition. So I'm going to go calc, and you can see it already calls it up. Calc tax underscore tax equals I can call it, but I want this. I want those two, VAT and sales value. So VAT, and I'm going to go with a different type of definition. I'm going to use a caps one, which is then in naming conventions, that definition, that variable and VAT caps would be two different variables, so you can clearly see it. And then I'm going to go sales. I'm going to call that one sales. Equal. Calculate that, and the input I'm going to use is the purchase price. And then I'm going to print. First the purchase price. I'm going to Second of all, I'm going to print the output for that, which should be the 15%. And let's let them align. Then I'm going to, and I just need to get the syntax right here again. Print the sales value go there, and we'll call it sales, which is my variables. So just to explain again, so first I created a definition which I called calculate tax. I said I need an input parameter, and input parameters would then be specified in the heading here, and I've specified mine as I need the rand value. Then in the definition, within the definition as a sub, I will calculate, and watch the indentation, it's not at the same level as definition. So it is a sub piece of code of definition. I want to calculate the VAT, and I want to calculate the sales value, which uses rand value as input. Then I want to return to what I've calculated to the main program. If I don't use return, it would stay in that program. It will never be retrieved. But if I use return, it needs to be returned, and it expects a value. Now in my main program, I went and said that purchase price would be equal to 10,000, and I'm going to use that as input into my definition, which would then be inserted into the in the brackets for rand value. Then I want to go and first calculate a new variable called VAT, which is not the same as that one because it is my main program's variable. This is the definitions variable. They're not related. Then I want to also calculate sales, which is the same then as sales value. I say equal to. So what it effectively means is that if I use my definition, it expects two outputs, and you would write your outputs here, and outputs are specified by return and the return command. So those two variables needs to be used here, and they must be the same kind, so it both must be real time or float. Both variables are floats, and then I say equal to, and I call my definition. Just go back. I call my definition, and then I use purchase price as an input, and it should then return the various values for me. Okay, run it, and there you go. 10,000 is the input, 1,500 is the VAT, 11,500 is the sales price. So if I make this 20, it should do exactly that. Now, let's make it a bit more fancy. I'm now going to go with a command while I and let's call while purchase is not equal to 0. So if you put in a 0, it would actually stop the command. Now, because I've put a while command there needs to be a sub command, or it needs to be indented. So I indented that the while, the conditions under there would be like that, and then I say purchase is the same as input capture purchase amount, and I would do that, and then I would be able to capture the purchase amount. Now remember, it's captured as a string, so I need to convert the purchase amount to a real value. So purchase equals float, and now the purchase value. And then what it effectively will do is convert the real value into a float, which then will be used as input into the rest. So let's see if that works. Here's my something is not working. It gives me while purchase not equal to 0. Purchase is not defined, so guess what? I first need to set purchase to 0 because it needs to have a value as a variable. So first rule, it needs to have a value as a variable, and then we can run it. And let's run it now. You'll see it ended immediately because purchase shouldn't be 0, so I'm going to put it to 1. And let's see if it now goes into the loop. Yes, it goes into the loop. So purchase is 1. So if it's 1, it's not 0. So it will then allow this go to be executed. So I go and I put 12,000, and it would calculate for me and already ask me for the next one I want to calculate. So if I now put in 5,000, it would calculate the next one. and so on and so on. And if I want to get out of it, I want to put in 0 and it would exit. And that is the end of the lesson, and that explains to you definitions as well. Keep on practicing, and then we discuss it. We will discuss the more advanced programming next.